Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to get on and talk to everybody about the Selective Service and what it is, how it works in relations to the welfare program, and this and that. And it's only going to be brief, I think, because this is the first time I've looked at this Selective Service registration code itself. And so I've never actually looked at it in depth. So I might find some stuff here that might relate to other information I've already researched or correlate with research that I should be doing as well. So we're going to take a look at that. Okay. This is, obviously, we're looking at 34 CFR 668.37 Selective Service Registration. Now, when we look at this, we see it's the Education Department. And it's regulations of the offices of offices. So it is an official office of a military service. That's where the offices sit. It's a provisional government by a military service and operates under martial law, and the political offices thereunder are all offices of the same thing, whether it be an office of the Department of Education, Homeland Security, Administration, Accountability, Management and Budget, whatever. It's still military. Every last bit of it is military. Office of Post-Secondary. Post. Office of Post-Secondary Education. It's not primary education of the post. Get it? But it's Office of Post-Secondary Education, Department of Education. This is all public. It's not private education of posting. Of post. What is a post? And like I've said before, everywhere you go, you're posting shit to somebody's record. And you've only got a secondary education to a primary record. Okay, so let's take a look at it. A, to be or not to be. That is the question. It says selective. Okay? Once you elect to be part of the service, then you get a selection. As being enrolled in education, Mom and Dad elected to put you up for selective service registration. Boys. To be eligible to receive Title IV and higher education program funds, a male student who is subject to registration with Selective Service must register with Selective Service. Okay? That tells us males or females benefit from the Title 4D and the higher education program funds. So ladies, I want to ask you, just like food stamps and everything, why are you not getting education free? Is it because they're telling you, well, it's going to cost you this, this, and this, when in fact a higher education program funds it? through welfare, which is for the benefit of mothers and children, and never once mentions the dad except in taking charge over a child of which either parent objects. So if a male student objects, and the only reason they would have this for moms and children is if the male student wasn't around. So I want everybody to think about this, because it's still a selective service. You always have the ability to back out and say, I'm sorry, I made a bad choice. I found a better way. I found a better path. I found a higher education for myself, so my woman and my children wouldn't have to depend on yours through a secondary education program. Which is still, that's what their higher education is. It's still a secondary program. Think about this, people. All these creditors, accountants, attorneys, bankers, a lot of this information that we're putting out, they have never heard of, even though they went to 2, 4, 6, 8 years of college. I guarantee you that doctor that took a Hippocratical oath, I can completely prove he is incompetent on the stand by questioning an English major, and why such an idiot who professes that he understands English would take an oath to God and to Apollo and the Greek gods. You want this in the kitchen? Yeah, please. Just set it on the stove. Comprehend that, folks. You want to put me to a competency test? Why did that doctor take a Hippocratic oath to God, Apollo and the Greek gods? No, not the one that's questioning me about my competency, but I'm questioning my mom's competency and this whole fucking record and its ability to question my competency first. Because as far as I know, that's tampering with a witness, an informant, unlawfully converting and instrumentalizing a deceptive language. Pure and simple. So it goes on to say, a male student does not have to register with the Selective Service if the student is below age of 18 or was born before January 1st, 1960. I think they need to update that. See, this is one of those points that I like to make because it shows an inconsistency on the record. Think about this, guys. If somebody's born before January 1st, 1960, that means that motherfucker's got to be at least 73 years old at this point in time. We are talking about now time in its correct, accurate correlation. Okay? Plain language. In plain language, this is aired. Is enrolled in an officer procurement program. The curriculum, officer procurement program. Did you enroll your children in an officer procurement program, the curriculum of which has been approved by the Secretary of Defense after you registered their birth with the Secretary of Defense through the Department of Defense birth registration, which is only an agreement between the federal government and an official of the state to assign a social security number to a newborn child who has already proven that they are taking charge over of a child over parents at all, because neither parent has made an objection first, including the mom, the informant. The Citadel Secretary of Defense at This tells you where the Virginia Military Institute, Lexington, Virginia. Norwich University. That's a college. North Georgia College. That's a title. Same situation. These are granted organizations. These are land grants. These are land grant colleges. This is a land grant institution. Possession, entry, and ejection from lands is a military operation. Is a commissioned officer of the Public Health Service. Telling you, when you get that assigned Social Security number to the newborn child, you just entered them into a commissioned office of a military public health service. You elected as mom and dad to do so. And then you turned around and continued that with enrollment for curriculum to train him for public procurement. Or a member of the reserve of the Public Health Service. Again, telling you it's a military operation who is on active duty. Mom and dad, are you on active duty? Mom, were you on active duty when you were bearing labor pains, doing his good works, after one of his children was founded in your kiln, your womb, and you were entrusted with that product of life for 9 months? Dad, did you see that? Were you co-trustee in that? Being cast upon the earth and not being part of the military. They tampered with witnesses. All you got to do is say so. They can't prove otherwise. None of their documents are scriptural. None. Not one. None. When the secretary processes a male student's FAFSA, the secretary determines whether the student is registered with the Selective Service under a data match with the Selective Service. Everything's entered into the Selective Service records, moms and dads. Moms who bear children to females, little girls. Even though you're not in the military, dad's not there. And it's assumed that dad is lost at sea, and the state is going to help take care of the welfare of mom and the child. If mom and dad simply step up, say no thanks, that's not the way it is, and that's not the way it can be, because we are not with the Selective Service ourselves, then I'm sorry. We can't just, you can't just sign us up. See, by signing up for that welfare, that SS5 application at the age of 18, guys and ladies, you're stating that you're part of the military, when that's not so. Moms and dads, when you have children and you enter them in that birth registration, you're saying you're part of the military. And if that's not so, that record can't be made. It's a false data entry. Under the data match, Selective Service reports to the secretary whether its records indicate that a student is registered. That's all it does. It doesn't prove anything. It only indicates. It's indicative. It is not proof. It is evidence in, on, and for the record that certain transfers and transactions have been committed, but the information is never verified. Never. If it were, they would find that it's false. This is why I pose that all you got to do is correct the record. That the student is registered and the secretary reports the results of the data match, not the actual scrutiny of a record, but just the results of what's indicative to the student and the institution the student is attending. If the Selective Service does not confirm through the data match that the student is registered, the student can establish that he is registered, is not, or was not required to be registered. Correction of the records. I'm sorry. As I find in the records, mom and dad, the informant, mom, as an informant, couldn't be part of the military. Somebody tampered with a witness. Fact on the record. Has registered since the submission of FAFSA. Meets the conditions of paragraph D of this section, which says an institution may determine that a student who was required to, but did not register with Selective, is not ineligible to receive Title IV and higher education assistance for that reason. Is not ineligible. In other words, they're admitting that you are eligible, guys, to receive Title IV and higher education assistance. For that reason. If the student can demonstrate by submitting clear and unambiguous evidence to the institution that he was unable to present himself for registration for reasons beyond his control. It's beyond my control. Isaiah 44 verse 5 says that I shall call myself by the name of Jacob and subscribe by my hand in the surname of Israel. Such as hospitalization, incarceration, or institutionalization, or he is over 26, and when he was between 18 and 26 and were required to register, he did not knowingly and willfully fail to register with the Selective Service, or what they leave out here is he did not knowingly and willingly register with the Selective Service despite not being eligible. He served as a member of one of the U.S. Armed Forces on active duty and received a DD-214, Certificate of Release of Discharge, or Release or Discharge from Active Duty. Certificate of Release or Discharge. You have to complete and qualify its use. This is telling you it can be used for a release. In other words, you release your services from the military to the civil duties, civil areas, civil jurisdiction, civil services. So now you're done with the military service and you're going to release your personal services to the civil side of the record. Or discharge from active duty whereupon you go upon your own private way. They do know this stuff. You just have to be able to express it. Hey, I made a mistake. I made an accident. I had all these accidents, continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions, placing public liability where I never expected or intended as the insured. See, when I took up the SS5 and became insured and started placing those liabilities on the record through continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions of believing that I was required to, when in fact I wasn't and was not even eligible to, I repent. I'm sorry. I did not mean to cause all this trouble. But now that I know of it, and I've given notice, it's everybody's duty, because you're the ones on the civil or military side in the service still that have an active duty and have not been released or discharged from that active duty. Showing military service with other than the Reserve Forces and National Guard. All you got to do is flip the script on them, guys. They tell you. This is very plain language. For the purpose of paragraph D21 or D2I of this section, an institution may consider that a student did not knowingly and willingly fail to register. They can also consider that he did not knowingly and willingly register under eligibility. He didn't realize that he wasn't eligible and therefore did register, and he didn't mean to, didn't realize it. Now that he realizes it, the record must be retracted, for the record must reflect accurately. In that, I apologize for my mistakes. I repent. And as a redeemer, a stranger and sojourner with our Father which art in heaven, in all of the lands of my possession I shall grant a redemption. And that's what I'm doing. That's all I wish. It's my wish because it's His will. The student submits to the institution an advisory opinion from the Selective Service system that does not dispute the student's claim that he did not knowingly and willingly or willfully fail to register. And this here is a statement in our verse stating the same thing, but that I registered, but I did so unknowingly and intentionally. But now that I realize I wasn't eligible at the time, I have to repent. The institution does not have uncontroverted evidence that I did so. They can't prove that I did so intentionally by knowing this stuff and was therefore going to defraud their entire system for 33 fucking years. And then spend 6 years trying to figure it all out myself. They can't prove that, folks. It's because I sought a higher education outside of their education system. A student, that's what showed me that I'm not eligible to register in that system. It's a military system, and I'm a peaceful inhabitant in this world, a stranger and sojourner with Him on a spiritual journey as a living soul in the embodiment of a man in image and likeness of Jesus Christ in Eucharist. A student who is required to register with the Selective Service and has been denied the Title IV and higher education program assistance because he has not proven to the institution that he has registered with Selective Service may seek a hearing from the Secretary by filing a request in writing with the Secretary. So now we find we're dealing with the Secretary of the Social Security Administration as far as the administrative law judges, and the Secretary of the Selective Service. Okay, a statement that he is in compliance with registration requirements. So my statement would be that I went outside or entered into the bounds of registration requirements unknowingly and unintentionally, which caused harm not only to myself, but to my family, my children, my companion, my biological brothers and sisters, the parents that adopted me. They call me a lunatic. It's definitely caused damage, not to myself, but to them. A concise statement of the reasons why he has not been able to prove that he is in compliance with those requirements, and copies of all material that he has already supplied to the institution to verify his compliance. People, you keep trying to enter documents proving your compliance or their non-compliance. You're entering documents into the record, and that's not the way it's done. You issue a concise statement of the reasons why you cannot be. I urge you to come out of her. And though we can't supply copies of all material that I've already supplied to the institution, I can pull forth their record that would have anything and show that it's not consistent. Therefore, it must be retracted. Must. It will prove that they have been stealing from private people. The record will prove theft by conversion from private people that were not in the military. And this is the only people it applies to. It's a military health system, like I've been saying. It's all an insurance scheme that then says you have to educate your children so they can operate in commerce and get a job. That job is a fucking military position. Secretary provides an opportunity for a hearing to a student who asserts that he is in compliance with registration requirements and files a written request for a hearing in accordance with paragraph F1, right here, of this section within the award year for which he was denied Title IV Health and Higher Education Program assistance, or within 30 days following the end of the payment period, whichever is later. It says within the award year. So you can't go back and get awards from prior years, but I could certainly write a written request now for last year if I'd applied and was denied, which I was. I went to go get a set of eyeglasses and I was denied because of the mask. By a Walmart employee at that. For a doctor who took an oath to the United States under God for good faith, in full faith and credit. And then I can only presume that he possibly took a Hippocratic oath in his doctorates. An official designed or designated, not appointed, not assigned, but designated by the Secretary, shall conduct any hearing held under paragraph F2 of this section. An official designated by the Secretary. So now we don't have to deal with the Secretary of Selective Service. We can go right back to the Secretary of Social Security Administration again. Because that's who the administrative law judges deal with. Conduct on any hearing held under paragraph 2. This hearing, the sole purpose of this hearing is the determination of compliance with registration requirements, which are judicial requirements. Again, post-secondary. The post office is one that regulates the judiciary. Postal Regulatory Commission. They're the ones that administrate all the administrative law judges, and they do that through the judicial discretions, which are accounted for through the Social Security Administration at the state level. That's why that's the judicial record, and the courts hold the criminal record, where they keep the index, which is the fingerprint index and the interstate identification index. FBI record, investigations record. They investigate the record. At this hearing, the student retains the burden of proving compliance by credible evidence, credible evidence, with the requirements of the Military Selective Service Act. The designated official shall not consider challenges based on constitutional or other grounds to the requirements that a student state and verify, if required, compliance with registration requirements, or to those registration requirements themselves. So, that pretty much says that you're not supposed to use their record against them, so you don't. Jeremiah 1 verse 5. I formed thee in the belly before I knew thee. Before thou wast cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And by the record itself, it is only nations that pose to have militaries. I know of no family, mom, dad, and their heirs that pose to have militaries. A military venue is strictly commercial, and commercial venues are strictly military. Any determination of compliance made under this section is final unless reopened by the Secretary and revised on the basis of additional evidence. Additional evidence. To the record, not in, on, and for the record. A distinct difference. This is the written determination that you make yourself. Just like in 26 U.S.C. 6201, the determination of the taxpayer shall be assessed by the Secretary. The assessment isn't done until somebody makes a determination. They have nothing to assess until you determine to enter something into the record. In, on, and for the record. Then they assess that. Now, the Secretary shall determine. It's no longer an assessment. Any determination of compliance made under this section is final. So I'm giving the determination, and it's final. And that whole record that they pose against me proves to be summary. So all I have to do is pose that I've posted my declaratory judgment for 2 years now on my worldwide website, privately. I have issued a notice internationally. Just did so yesterday morning. Early morning. Pentagon got its notice. And hopefully it went up and down the line, despite how many notices I shotgunned out. I want the world to notice that I've made a determination. I declared it. The court gave its summary judgment. I made my determination based on that summary judgment. And again, like I said, declared it. And now when nobody rebuts it, it becomes a final judgment. And then all I have to do is issue notice to the Secretary that final judgment has been determined. Compliance of this under this section is final unless reopened by the Secretary. Now, unless it's reopened by the Secretary, and the Secretary can base that and revise it on additional evidence as opposed to what I've posted, then please do so. You would have to prove that I'm party of that military offense of a nation under the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, which indentures the Treaty of Berne, protecting literary and artistic works, and the law of nations, otherwise known as the principles of the laws of nature. Naturally. Any determination of compliance made under this section is binding only for the purposes of determining eligibility for Title IV higher education program assistance. Guess where they get their authority, folks? 20 of the U.S. Code. That's employee benefits. Selective service under education, and they get their authority from employee benefits and national security. Reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art. My. Is that birth registration or reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art? Are they trying to protect their literary work that is false? Are they claiming a literary work based on information abstracted from a specimen and then artistically drawn in another form? And objects of natural history. I hope you guys are paying attention. Natural history. Like I said, law of nations, which would be national history, and would be subjects of national history, as opposed to all objects of natural history. And I hope you learn naturally how to teach your little ones their natural observances so that they can object to the National Selective Service appropriately and righteously. In the meantime, remember guys, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing this. Look up this information. No need to post links. Very short research. Look them up. Do your own continuous research or abstract research above and beyond what's being shown here, so we can all come together with a greater knowledge and enforcement of how this stuff works. So remember, God bless. Have a great day. I'll post my PayPal link. Be sure to hit that and share some love. God bless. Bye.